good. You're good. All right. Welcome to the No Egg podcast slash No Eggs podcast. Today we have a very special guest and friend to the podcast, Dan, with across the mountains. I'm sorry, shit.
Right.
Yeah,
Across,
that's
it says it
horrible.
on his shirt,
Yeah,
bro.
across the mountains. Is it a video production?
Yeah, tell
yeah.
us about your project.
Yeah.
The company.
Yeah. So thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. I love doing podcasts. Whenever people ask me to come on, I always have a good time. So thanks for having me. So I run a media company called Across the Mountains, and it's basically a broadcasting journalism type of format, but it's really video journalism, if you want to call it like that. So we're dedicated to telling Hmong American stories, stories that are relevant to Hmong people, and current events about Hmong people. Yeah.
Yep. And then just the other month you came out to the farm. You did a quick video for us, so I really appreciated that. And then have you guys connected? Are you guys working on
Nope.
something?
I messaged him out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do that. I'm not the most formal guy. I just, hey, dude. So
That's the best way to go
sometimes
about
that
doing
works.
it.
Dale, I was going to ask you, though, Across the Mountains, tell us about how you came up with that name.
So, oh man. So originally, we were called Nine Mountains.
Okay.
And so what had happened was, so it comes from like the folk tale of like when a Hmong person dies, they have to cross like 9 mountains. So we were called Nine Mountains, but then we tried to like register the name, and like someone already took the name. So I was like, oh fuck. So
Yeah, fuck those guys.
I know. I
wonder
was
what
like,
those
oh
guys
dude,
are
they
doing.
already registered the name. They bought the domain name and all that stuff. So I was like, oh shit, now I have to come
Yeah.
up with a freaking
Yeah.
new name.
Have you tried googling them up? See what
Yeah,
they do.
they're like a outdoor outfitting company.
Oh,
So
okay.
they sell
All
like
right. Makes
outdoorsy
sense.
stuff,
Okay.
So I was
All
like,
right.
oh damn, man, I really like that name. So yeah, then we went, I bounced some names around and I came across the mountain. So
Across the Mountains.
that's how it happened. Yeah.
That's pretty fucking sweet,
So it's
man.
got the significance of like, obviously it has like some Hmong significance
Right.
to crossing mountains and
Yep. So I couldn't have 9 mountains. So then I actually like this name better now.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I like it too. I think it just that speaks pretty well to like all the Hmong people too across
Yep.
the mountains. Like I think like even without obviously I asked you because I wanted an explanation, but like I could almost like infer what it could roughly mean to me at least.
Right,
It's easy
yeah.
to like understand what it could mean to me, especially knowing that it's like Hmong, like documenting Hmong stories and stuff
Yep.
like that.
Well,
Definitely.
Just historically, like we've been mountain people, and
Yeah.
we migrated like all across like Southeast Asia and South Asia, right? And we're kind of known as like the mountain farmers.
Yep.
Pretty
yep,
much.
Yep.
Yeah, and you've done a bunch of really cool, like culturally sensitive, like topics. Like, you did one with the farm that you came out. Did one with the bags. That one was pretty interesting. And then you did one with the shaman, the young shaman.
Oh yeah,
kid.
I watched that
Yeah.
one. I did watch that.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
So like, you get to go in and talk to like so many different like people, and you hear different like unique stories. Like, I guess like working with so many different Hmong people. Like, how would you define Hmong as a culture, like as a state now?
Yeah, it's really cool to see because I think one of our goals with the videos is we don't want to tell like traditional news stories. I feel like there's plenty of news. You can turn on the 5 p.m. news and then there's plenty of like news stories. So we don't want to be like a traditional news room and present like news stories. We want to tell stories that aren't your traditional stories and stories that you don't hear about all the time. And so that's why when we kind of try to research these stories, we want to go after people who are like your non-traditional stories or your non-traditional people. And so I have learned just meeting these people, I've learned that, wow, Hmong people have come a long way.
Right.
They do so many different things now. We have farmers, we have people who still practice traditional shamanism. Then you have people who are going overseas and like helping girls there. And then man, Hmong people are so diverse now. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful is there's so many Hmong people doing so many cool things.
Right.
Which is awesome, and
Yeah.
it's hard to silo us now, there's Hmong millionaires now,
Right.
there's Hmong people do everything now. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty It is pretty freaking wild, man. And then like one of the things like, I had a really nice conversation with you at the farm and got to know you a little bit more. So I know it's like your first time like meeting him, but one of the things you were telling me was that you had went to school like to film school, and so you had your original ambitions were to become a director. Like, tell us a little bit more about your story and your background and how you got into film.
Yeah. I've been making films since like high school. So that was like 2010, 2011. So I've always been making like traditional movies, and like that was like my first love. I still love it. I still really do enjoy making movies. I think there's kind of like to see something on paper to the moment you film it and then you edit it and then you see it on the big screen. I think there's like I will always love that process, but I think at some point in my life, I can't pinpoint it, but at some point in my life, I realized like, although that's great, entertainment is awesome. There's a part that was kind of missing for me,
Right.
and so when I started doing videos for Across the Mountain, I kind of realized like, hey, well, these videos, yes, they do entertain, but they do educate people, and they do have an impact on people, and so that's when I realized like, hey, I think. This is the shift I need to take, because I finally realized like my videos were making an impact. Whereas in the past, when I was just making movies, people would watch it and then they would forget about it. It would just be like they'd pay, go to the theater, they'd watch like an hour-long movie, and that was it.
Right.
It never did anything. And so I love making movies, like I said, but I just wanted to make things that were a little bit more impactful.
Yeah.
Something that would last longer, something that would be more impactful for my community and for myself. So that's kind of, like I said, I can't pinpoint when that happened exactly, but it just was kind of, I think it's kind of like an eventual like accumulation of everything. Cause I did like, oh man, like 6 movies.
Yeah.
And, some of them made money, some of them didn't, but none of them ever had like a lasting impact on me. So that's why I was like, okay, time to do something else now.
When you did 6 movies, were they like local films, Hmong productions?
Yep. Yeah, some of them were like student films that I did while I was in college, and then after that, after college, I did about 3 other films that went to like theaters.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, those are actually like self-funded films too. So yeah, though those are great. They were super fun. I met so many wonderful people, but like I said, it was just one and done thing,
Yeah.
So it's weird. I do love it though. I make it sound so bad, but I did love the process of it.
Any notable titles? Feel free to drop them.
Yeah.
Where can we find them?
Yeah. See, that's kind of
Are they available to be watched?
Some of them are. Yeah. So the biggest film we did was called Spirits Dawn, that released in 2018. Yeah, we did a tour of that. So we toured it in Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Carolina, and like 2 like Fresno and Sacramento in California. So we toured it. It was great. I think that was like one of the biggest moments of one of the biggest accomplishments in my life up to that point.
Wow.
But like I said, after that movie, it's just like it had like a hot buzz for a bit, and then it was kind of like that was it. So yeah.
And in this generation, like, there's so many people like doing content and videos. Like, what did you see? Like, everybody's like self-taught, right? And did you see a benefit like going to film school? Like, do you kind of maybe see a difference in maybe your work, or is it just about building connections in film school?
Yeah, I would say that looking back at it now, if I were to ask myself like would I have gone to school for it, I probably would say no.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a time and place for school, but I don't think it's a requirement. I think I have a lot of friends that I still keep in touch with that did go to film school, and they kind of took that traditional like Hollywood route where like after college they would go and like work for like a production company, and then they would be like a PA, like buy coffee, and then they would like work their way up.
Yeah.
So I know people like that, and then I know people who never went to school, and they kind of took the independent route, and they kind of grind it out. So there's definitely it's not a requirement. It'd be nice to have, but me looking back at it now, I think knowing what I know now, would I have gone? Probably not.
Yeah, because like the arts is always like a very interesting thing,
Yeah.
right? Just because like it's creatives, like there's a skill, but like there's a lot of value in kind of breaking traditions in art. Mm-hmm. And we had Pa on. She's a Hmong artist, and she went and got her master's program at Yale.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things she touched on was like the importance of like networking once you get there, and like kind of learning how to have these conversations with the like people in these high social class like socialites. So like I don't know, like creatives and when it comes to education, like I've always I've always wondered like where the value was, and it's always an interesting.
Yeah, I think creative people too. I mean,
Yeah.
their brains are usually like overpowering with creativity.
Yeah.
That you don't need to tell them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They will find the software. They'll find the Final Cut Pro. They will analyze. It's like a hobby when you're a kid. Like you just have a hobby and then you really love it.
Right.
And then it seems like the creative types, their brain needs to get put on paper or like video or something. Otherwise, they'll just kind of go
Right.
crazy too. So like, yeah, you're right. But formal education has, like you said, I think it probably definitely has its place. You probably learn like a lot of structural
Yeah.
Right.
things
Yep.
that are
Yeah.
probably important to know that maybe you would. If you didn't learn in school, you'd probably navigate around and learning it later on. So
Yep.
I think there's definitely benefit, but yeah,
Like
I don't
just
know.
the
Out of
storytelling, the structure stuff.
Yeah.
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 I think, going back, like thinking back to my college days, it's like, I think in terms of what I learned from books, it was like, I can't remember any things I learned.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, giving me the tools to learn hands-on,
Right.
that stuff is just stuff
Right.
that, I took with me. So,
Yeah.
it's not a requirement, but I do definitely notice that like the people who went to school, they have a little bit of a head start.
Okay.
Whereas the independent folks, they have to do a little bit more learning, and they have
Right.
to kind of navigate the playing field a little bit differently.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, nothing is impossible. As long as you're determined to do it, you can do it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and you said you had friends like doing the PA thing, working in Hollywood. Like that was never like something you
Man.
wanted to pursue.
I
or-
honestly really did think about it.
Oh, really?
I really did think about it. Right after college, I kind of had to make a decision of like, okay, do I come back home and like try to find work, or do I go with my friends to California, what everyone's doing, and just be a PA for like 2-3 years? And I really thought about it. I was like, man, I kind of want to not do that.
Yeah.
I'm tired of. I was already a poor college kid. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I gotta make some real money. So
Right.
I decided to come home and like, get a job. I was still doing video, but it was more of a traditional 9-to-5 type of job. So that was a little bit different, but I still did what I loved. I still made videos. I was still being a creative, but I definitely didn't want to do that.
so is that
PA.
was being creative for a corporate company then, I assume?
Yeah.
Just doing,
Yep. It was like a corporate videography job. So
Okay.
it still allowed me to utilize my skills
Yeah.
and like make videos and be creative, but it was more of like a 9-to-5 type of job.
Yeah.
in like advertisement or
Yep.
marketing, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's got to be kind of cool though. Like
Yeah. I mean, it's probably good. I would assume as a creator, like now that you're running your own company, doing what you do, running a mini doc series and stuff like that, that come out of your mind. I would assume, and tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm right on this, but I feel like if I was in your shoes and where you are today, I feel like corporate would eventually, I feel like it would drive me nuts, because it's like, these projects don't interest me at all. Yes, I get to use my the skills that I've acquired through the years, but the projects don't interest. They don't draw me to want to really seek answers. And is that something that you felt when you were there?
Yeah,
Because it is corporate, right?
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
your company.
No, that's 100%
Yeah.
true. That's 100%. And the one thing that really killed it for me was kind of like the corporate America bureaucracy. Because like a perfect example is you'd make a video and then you'd have to show it to 5 different people.
Yeah.
And like
Right.
every one of these persons had some sort of feedback, and it's just like, okay, so what do you want me to do? Just
Yeah.
remake the whole
Right.
thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it's,
But-
you know, because legal has something to say about it, and then
Right.
like marketing has something to say about
Yeah.
it, and then, you know, your boss has something to say about it. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
man, like, what? Why don't you guys just tell me
Right.
exactly what you want,
Yeah.
and I'll just
Yeah.
make it for you?
Yeah.
But then they're like, no, we want you to be creative. We want you to put your little spin on it. And it's like, okay, well, I did that, and
Yeah.
like, you know, you had to say all these things about it. So that's what really killed it for me. I mean, obviously the pay was great. You know, you had like a stable job. You know, I wasn't like a freelancer, you know.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it was different. It was, you had security, but then at the same time you had to deal with that like corporate America
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
Like
So
that's got to be crazy. Like as a creative, now you got to take your project to Suits and have them like scrutinize it and like pick it apart. Like that's gotta like.
Well, it's like you said. It's like I have a guy who for Yellow who's my videographer, and I'm big on just allowing a creator to use his creativity, but even so, as the owner of the company, when the video comes back to me, is like, yes, I do want you to use all your creative might because I truly trust you. That's why I hired you. And I'm a small company, so I can allow you to be truly yourself. And there's less political positions where we have to be careful because I know my stuff is not going to go to like 100,000 people or whatever. But even so, I still have moments when he shows me the video where I'm like, oh, actually, I was trying to get this point across more than what you showed. So there's always going to be, I think, that. And I think you're in the right place now because you get to use your creativity and project what you actually want in your mind, which I'm sure feels probably like a lot of work, but also very free.
yeah, I definitely felt like, you know, once I moved away from corporate America, you know, you kind of feel this burden lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
But then now I'm not answering to like Suits, but now I'm answering to people who are watching the videos. Because then
Right.
there's been times when I make videos and they're like, hey, you know, like you missed this and this and this and this, or like this wasn't said correctly. You're just like, oh shit. Now
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that actually. So now you're answering to like a different. I wouldn't call them my boss, but now you're answering
Yeah.
to different people now.
Yeah, the clients, the viewers. Yeah.
Right. So it makes a little bit. There's a little bit of nuances there, but I mean, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's part of the. I mean, that's part of the journey, and I think you're never gonna please everybody anyway. I like to think lately I've been thinking more and more like the more haters I have, the happier I've been.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that I want haters, but it just means that you're doing enough things that that people just want to say bad things about it, right? You're making enough buzz to that people are gonna that there's enough people now that don't agree with you, and I think that's almost a good thing. Because I mean, I think
Yeah.
no matter how big you get, like it would be impossible to get extremely big if you have a huge following and then please everybody, right? It's like red and blue, right? You're never gonna
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
everybody,
Yeah. Well,
no
that's-
matter which way you look at it.
Yeah, that's what the great Bobby Lee said too, right? He was like, you know, if they feel indifferent, that's like the worst thing, right? Like if they feel
Right,
indifferent
right.
about you,
You
like,
gotta have an opinion, yeah.
you know, as long as they have an opinion. And even Sophia, when she came in, we had her as a guest, and she was like, you know, if I get a negative comment, it's still boosting the algorithm. You know, even though like, you know, I may not respond to it, but it, you know, it may trigger like
Yeah.
a snowfall effect where people are
Like Floyd Mayweather, right?
yeah,
He did
constantly-
it perfectly.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I think having that is, I don't know. I still dread that day. I haven't had too many like haters or like negative like responses on any of my videos or any of my content, but like, oh, I dread that day because I don't know how well I can take that.
Yeah.
But like, even though like I know like it'll probably be good for me.
Don't worry, people are already doing it, dude. People are already thinking that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You just haven't heard it.
Haven't
You
posted.
just-
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
haven't
You're
heard
probably-
it.
You're probably
You
fucking
just haven't
right,
heard
man.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a learning because my first video, when I got like bad comments, I was like, oh man, I was so hurt. Like,
What was your first video about?
it was the Billy Lord, the young shaman video.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was my.
Oh, God, that one must have got a lot of.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I would assume a lot of people were probably really happy that you highlighted a young, modern American man who's a shaman and staying true to like the Hmong traditions. But at the same time, I've heard so many different stories of like ways that people shaman, I guess, if you want to say
Yeah.
it so. And I would just assume people are like, Oh, that's just they're gonna. This is the way they've seen
Right.
shamans for
Right.
them.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the feedbacks that
Yeah.
you got that? Unless you don't want to
No, it's
blast the person.
it's
that
weird because
commented.
like there's like a really large spectrum, and some people are like, oh, I'm shaman, my leg hurts, does that mean I'm a shaman now? And like
Yeah.
they'd make like all these like jokes, and I just be like, oh man, like
Yeah.
taking it the wrong way. I'd be like really hurt about it, but now I think about it, it's just like, you know what, like it's just online comments. So I definitely have kind of like gotten over that phase of like being hurt about online comments, so now it's
Yeah.
just it did take me a while, but now I'm just like, whatever, you just
Yeah.
read it and you just scroll through it. So
Yeah.
it's a learning process.
Did you learn a lot in that story? Did you know what was your base knowledge of shamanism before that?
Yeah. So my base knowledge was very like basic.
Yeah.
My grandpa's a shaman, but
Okay,
I
okay.
never had a conversation with them. I don't know what it is about like OGs, but like whenever you ask them a question, they'll kind of like beat around the bush,
Yeah.
or like they won't ever answer you directly. Like there's been many times when I asked my grandpa's like, so why do you guys do this? And he's just like, la 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 la, and like beat around the bush and like
Yeah.
never give me a direct answer. So like my knowledge of like shamanism was like super basic.
Yeah.
But the thing with Billy is like whenever I asked him a question, like he would like break it down in a language that like I would understand it as
Yeah.
like a young Hmong American. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot from him, and I had like so many questions about like the whole shamanism thing, and he just explained it in a way where it was easy for me to understand, and like
Yeah.
he would answer it directly too.
Yeah.
So like one of the questions I asked him was like, how do you even know like you're a legit shaman? Like what if you just are like sick, like
Yeah.
how do you even know? And he's like, well, there's a test, you take the test, and if you shake, or if you begin to enter the trance, you are potentially a shaman. That doesn't mean you will become a shaman, but like that's
Right.
kind of like the first step. And I was like, I just thought if you see shit, then you're just like, you're a shaman,
Yeah.
like that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah,
And he's
yeah.
like, no, that's not true, And he was just like explaining it to me, like he's like, everyone has like a sixth sense. Some people have a really strong sixth sense. Some people have a very weak sixth sense. Like for me, I don't see stuff. I don't hear things, So he's like, yeah, you probably have like a very weak sixth sense, but everyone has a sixth sense.
Right.
Some people have different magnitudes of it, but just because you have a sixth sense doesn't mean you're a shaman.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I was like, wow, okay, all right. So next time someone tells me they see stuff, I'm not, and they're a shaman, like don't pay really much attention to
Right.
it. So I learned quite a bit to it.
Well, that's so
Yeah.
huge, just because like a big cultural conversation right now is like kind of the loss of like culture and like the loss of like these traditions. And I think that's an important, like that's a big aspect of it. It's just like that generational gap and that like inability to communicate effectively with each other. Like
Yeah.
we can understand each other like as, like different generations, but like to be able to kind of speak in a way where like it does fully answer my question, like that's so important. And I think you like capturing that is so big too, just because like I'm pretty sure like a lot of people feel that way. Like I definitely feel that way. I still don't know like too much about shamanism or even like a lot of like Hmong history, so like I think like you capturing that and being able to kind of share that on a public platform is huge, and so that's pretty fucking sweet.
It's needed. I mean, I'm I truly do appreciate what you're doing because you're just sharing stuff that needs to get documented too. Like if no one documents it, then it just becomes like the old times. They're just stories that are told back and forth. But now we're in an era where we have the cameras, where we have the material, but still not everybody's going to go do it, right? Not everybody's going to want to write down the script, the narrative of what they want to show, find the person who's got the story to tell, and then put it all together in a palpable way where you can watch it and it's digestible. Like you're doing that. And thanks for doing that. It's awesome that you're doing that because when I watched that video, I'm like, God, I'm glad somebody's doing that.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's kind of that's really like the end goal for me, because
Yeah.
it's kind of weird to say, but when we think about it, because I used to think the same way, where it's like, oh man, like all this information is like not out there. But the more I did research on it, it's like the information is out there. It's just not easily accessible.
Yeah.
It's hard to find. These documents are like old, or these people who have the knowledge are not easily accessible. They're not easy to find, or they don't want to. They're not willingly putting themselves out there. So it's like, man, the information is there. It's just not accessible. So I wanted to do it in a way where it's like it's accessible. It's easy to watch. It's kind of content is king now. People watch stuff on their phone, and no one's gonna read a book anymore. So like a lot of this stuff isn't like written books and stuff. It's like I don't want to read anymore. So I want to put it in a way where it's like easily to access, and it's easy to digest.
Yeah. And you do a pretty good job of like breaking it down into like a digestible format. Just because like I know when you came out and shot my video, I fucking blabbered on for like hours and hours just talking about fucking like nothing. And you were able to kind of whittle that down into like, all right, so this is what's important. This is what I want to show, and this is kind of what he told me he wanted to show. So like that is truly a skill. Like, and as I'm editing more and more clips for this podcast, like I'm realizing like this is not fucking easy. Like editing a 1 minute clip is taking me like hours.
The ability to choose the words that are the most impactful in the shortest amount of time is definitely something that you have to, I assume, probably have to listen a few times to be like, do these words actually shift anything? Do they actually shift your soul? Do they do anything?
Right.
Like I'm thank you for doing the clips, and because I don't want to go through listening to all of I love our conversations, but I don't want to listen to it a million times over.
Dude,
but
it is rough.
But that is the key. And like the same thing, I watched a video. He shared it with me right away when you were done editing yours and you put it public, and I watched and yeah, because it was only like a 7 to 9 minutes, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it was like, knowing now, hearing the backstory that you guys filmed for a lot longer than that, it's the words that he spoke. You definitely chose the right ones to paint the picture that he wanted to convey. That probably he didn't even know how to convey it. He was conveying his story, but then you're shaping it in a 9 minute narrative, and I got the gist of it. I mean, I knew you already, but I got the gist of it, So
And do you feel like that's kind of like the ideal, like time, like that 7-10 minutes? Is that kind of where our attention spans are like, for these days?
Yeah, that's kind of the sweet spot that I want to stay in, is kind of within that, like 5 to 10 minute. But I definitely want to, and this is kind of in the works in the future, but I kind of want to explore kind of more of like a longer form documentary. There are some topics that you just can't do in 10 minutes, and it's super difficult to do. And so I do want to explore that, but that'll be later along the lines. But I do definitely feel that 5 to 10 minutes, perfect.
Yeah, that's a sweet spot. So do you have a favorite project that you've worked on?
Oh, man.
You don't have to say just his name.
Yeah. Exclude mine. I know how much you absolutely loved coming out to the farm, sweating out there.
I loved it. I thought the farm was great. I think my favorite one so far that I've done is on the Hmong funeral prices.
Yeah,
I think
that
that's
was huge.
Yeah, I think that's definitely.
Wait, where do I find your videos? First of all, because I feel like I didn't watch that one, and I'd like to watch that one. Where does one go to see your videos?
Right. So we live mainly on YouTube and Facebook. So that's kind of our two platforms that we use the most. We're on Instagram, probably not as much as I would like to be. So I got to get better at that. But mainly Facebook and YouTube. So all of our videos are on Facebook and YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. But that Hmong funeral one is like huge, right? Like, it's such like a hot topic. It's like an ongoing conversation right now about like the cost of of funerals and how we go about doing it. And
what do we find out? What is the cost?
Yeah, so we found out that there was actually
Too
a report.
expensive.
Yeah, there was actually a report that was done by the 18 Clan in 2021, I believe, and they found out that the average was like $34,000 for like an average like Hmong funeral. Yeah, so it's quite a bit of money. And when I read the report, I was just like, this is crazy. How come no one's talking about this?
Yeah.
And so I mean, we always knew it was expensive, And then so. I was like, someone did a report on this, and so I read the report. It actually broke it down. Like the report is actually great. So if you guys ever want to do a good reading,
I think I saw that. It was like they broke down like cost of like funerals, like renting the facility, burials, and everything.
Yeah, they broke it down like to the T. It was great. It's like 49 pages, but it's like it factors in a lot of things that you didn't really think about. Because and then they talked about like, oh well, like funerals in Minnesota, what's the average cost of like a non-Hmong funeral? What's the cost of like, what are the actual procedures of it? Why does it cost so much? So it's actually like a really good breakdown of it.
And so is that like, what is the cost of a non-Hmong funeral and a Hmong funeral? And is ours significantly higher?
Yeah. Yep. So the average cost of a non-Hmong funeral is about $5,400. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, it's crazy. But the one thing I also when people hear that number, if they might think that it's crazy, but then at the same time, you think about them like Hmong funerals are traditionally like 3 days.
Yeah.
And there's all
there's
these
food. There's
food.
It's a festival.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that go into it, and so like when I made that video, a lot of people like commented on. They're like, why does it cost? What's the difference? Why does it cost like that? Well, most of them aren't really familiar with like Hmong funerals, and so they don't know why it costs so much. So
And it was 3 days just because historically, like back in the motherland, people are traveling by foot, like from
That's
far
a good
away,
point,
like,
yeah. To come see
like
the
villages,
body, pay their respect.
So
before.
you kind of have to have that. Where it's like now, I think that one of the conversations is like, do we really need 3 days?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
Just because like
that's one of the first questions we asked too, because like the gentleman, his name is Bahua. He was the leader. He's the one that initiated the whole report. And I asked him, I was like, well, can you even? I traditionally thought that it always had to be 3 days. And he's like, well, no, it doesn't have to be 3 days. You can cut it down. It can be 1 day. It could be like an afternoon if you really wanted it to be. But, because people have kind of believed that it has to be 3 days, everyone does 3 days now. But he's like, if you want it to be like half a day, you can do it in half a day. If you want it to be 1 day, it could be 1 day.
And man, and funerals, like, my mother just passed last year, and so I had to go through the whole process, and it is like a sensitive topic. Like a lot of people have a lot of things to say, one, you are kind of putting on a show, and there was like disagreements in the family, like about, all right, how are we gonna go about doing this? Some people were like, oh, this needs to be a fest, like this needs to be a big deal.
Yeah.
And some people are kind of like,
no, it's just our family.
yeah, this is our family. This is our
yeah.
intimate moment. Like, we don't want this to be work, or we don't care about anybody else.
Right.
And and so, but that was like a big back and forth, and that became a big thing. And then, and it's hard to be on the side of, hey, I don't want this to be festive, right? Because on one end, you're almost kind of like, hey, I'm showing how much I love by making this thing grand. And then you're kind of on the end like, no, I don't want to make it grand. Mm-hmm. And, so you're almost kind of saying like, oh, I don't love it. The deceased as much, which is crazy, but that's almost kind of like oddly implied.
But sometimes in Hmong culture, when you don't make it big enough, you always have some that are like, you don't care to share this with everybody else because we know them too. Yeah. We're from the same village as them. It was 30 years ago, but why are we not invited to this as well? So then you're dealing with like almost a Hmong politics of it as well, unless, like, I think the only way that would work, like, unless your father or whoever, the person that was like, and I think that's something that needs to be talked about more too, because we went through my father-in-law who passed away last year too, where our elders, they're not used to the ideas of wills and stuff that we are grown accustomed to. Yeah. So maybe our funerals will be maybe different because we will say like, hey, I don't want you to drop all this. Now, they might still do it, but at least we're able to state that. And I think if my dad doesn't state that, then how do I know what he wants? So then maybe I just have to take the gamble and invite everybody and not disrespect anybody.
Well, yeah, that was like one of the things that helped streamline the process. My mother had a will, and she was just kind of like, "Hey, I want this. I want a minimal thing," because there were a lot of outside hands trying to like make this more grander than it than what it was, and so. And it was nice to have that will where it was like, hey, these are my mother's wishes. Yeah. She doesn't want this like big grand thing. But like, yeah, I can see both sides to it, but it is you know, it unfortunately turns into like a pissing contest. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think and you know, it's a thing. One of the gentlemen that we interviewed, the one thing he said that like is always going to stick with me. He's like, when people hear about this stuff, they blame Hmong culture.
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
oh, it's Hmong culture,
Yeah.
and he's like, it's not Hmong culture.
Yeah.
Like it's the family. So we
Right.
shouldn't say Hmong culture is bad. We shouldn't say like
Right.
Hmong culture requires us to do these things.
Yeah.
It's not Hmong culture.
Yeah.
It's the family. So
Right.
it's the families
100%.
that decide to have grand funerals, and it's
Yeah.
the families who decide to like, you know, waste a bunch of money. So it's
Yeah.
not Hmong culture that requires us to do these things.
Yeah.
It's the family. So don't get those two things mixed up. And when he said this, I thought about it. I was like, you know what? That's actually like really true.
Yeah.
Where like, because so many of these incidents have happened, us as the younger generation, we look at it, we think it's like, oh man, Hmong culture is like
Right.
so bad.
Hmong culture asks
Right.
a lot of us.
I know
They're
Hmong
like, they're
culture is
asking
so
us to
bad.
spend all this money.
Right. And
But
you
you're
know,
right.
I thought about it when he said it. I was like, you know what? That's actually true, because I used to think about it like that too. I was like, man, Hmong culture is bad. Hmong people are so greedy. You know, Hmong
Yeah.
culture is this, Hmong culture is that. But then when he said that, I thought about it. I was like, you know what? That's actually true.
Right.
You know, Hmong funerals are actually very beautiful. You know, there's actually so many cool things that go on. But it's like nowadays when you go there, it's like people are drinking, money is being spent, no one's
Yeah.
listening to this, you know, the eulogies, and you go there,
Yeah.
it's just like, man,
Yeah.
it just ruins it for you.
Yeah,
you know?
it kind of
Yeah.
turns into a crazy party. And it's not just young people. Like, it's like,
Right.
man, I'm seeing like, you know, there's like eulogies going on. There's like a table
Oh,
of like
for sure.
old drunk uncles.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
man, like
100%.
that's great. Like it's something.
I think there's
you
some
know,
emojis that just make it a thing to go on the weekend and actually, they might not say it, they do.
Yeah.
But I think deep inside,
I believe
some
it.
of them are going there just to party on
believe
the
it.
weekend.
I believe it.
Hand their $20, pay
Yeah.
the entrance fee,
Yeah.
and start drinking.
Yeah.
And there's food, you know, food's there too.
Yep,
So
I believe it.
You know,
Yeah,
pay,
no.
pay the cover and then free beer and fucking free food.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, what are some, and you don't have to talk about, well, without spilling beans, what are some projects that you maybe one day want to do, and you can say as much or as little as you want, but what are some ideas or topics that have kind of been circling in the back of your mind that you're like, man, I'd love to cover that someday?
Yeah. So the biggest project that I really, this is kind of like the by the end of the year I want to get it done, but I want to do probably like a 25-30 minute long documentary about like murder suicides.
Ooh, that
I
would
think
be
that's
interesting. You'll get all the women to watch that because my wife watches that shit religiously.
Yeah.
And yes, you will
Yeah.
get all the Hmong
And that's
females.
such a
watch.
huge topic. And
It's a huge
just
topic.
recently,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
this
just
past
happened,
week.
I think,
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, in
Yep.
Brooklyn Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would love if you did that.
Yeah, that's something that I've
Yeah.
been wanting to do, and like we've been kind of putting the works in and trying to like get the right people to come in. I hate to say this, but I feel like it's such a fine line of like you're walking, and I don't want to like upset anybody. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
I wish
It
I had
is
the
serious.
freedom to just do whatever I wanted
Yeah.
to, but at the same time, it's like it's such a topic that it's like so divisive.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, man, I just gotta like we're trying to navigate the playing field.
But it needs to be talked about.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Because it's, it just happens too often. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I don't hear about it from other cultures, maybe just because, you're more likely to hear
Right.
the Hmong when it happens within
Yeah.
your own community, you're maybe more likely to hear about it. So I don't know if I have that pretense when I think about it, but to me, it seems in my world that it does happen more in our community
Right.
and culture. Like I said, I don't know the other cultures because we don't hear about it, but
Have you
But it-
looked into those numbers?
Yeah, I actually have. So there's actually a women's support group out in Eau Claire. They did a compiling of like all the murder suicides that have happened. I think since like the 70s.
Yeah.
And it comes out to almost like one or two a year. So
Yeah.
it's quite a large
Right.
number. But then also in the report they also compare it to like there's a whole breakdown of like what type of domestic abuse was it? Was it
Right.
like they're using a gun, using a
Right.
weapon, and then they also break it down like what what age group it is and stuff like that. So these numbers are out there. It's just like I said, these reports, no one reads them. I mean, people do read them, but it's not easily accessible, and it's like a long report you got to read through.
I wonder how big of a thing murder-suicide is in Laos or like other countries.
country?
Yeah.
Like within Hmong communities still, but in other countries. Like, is it almost a cultural thing?
Yep.
Did that start in Laos and then the same habits were brought on over here, right? Because maybe it is much longer than that. Or is it a more modern thing that happens where gun are way more accessible?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Because we have
that's kind of that'd be a fun, interesting,
And
not
as
fun,
much-
sorry, interesting fact.
Yeah.
to
And as
find
much
out.
as I would like to think it's not a cultural thing, similar to the funeral thing, where it's like, it's not a cultural thing. It's just, I guess.
But it does happen in our community.
Yeah, that's the undeniable piece.
That's the undeniable piece.
Where it's like,
And we're all and our No Egg podcast is Southeast Asian, but primarily Hmong, and we're all Hmong here. So to have three Hmong dudes even having this discussion where we are not family, we don't know each other to that extent, to have this conversation is one that needs to be had more often. It's a conversation that needs to be addressed because there's still Hmong guys who are not OGs. They're still young dudes our age doing this shit too,
Yeah.
So clearly something needs to be said about it,
Yep.
or at least highlighted or put to the surface, and it needs to it maybe. And I hope that even us talking like this, maybe somebody else hears it and thinks like, damn, my cousin was kind of saying some crazy stuff the other day. Now I'm gonna go talk to my cousin, make sure he doesn't do nothing crazy. Like, just those little things, just putting it to the surface could be, in the grand scheme of things, it could be life-saving,
Yeah.
And I think that documentary would be a huge hit. Not only interesting, but it's a topic that absolutely needs to be put to the surface.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be an answer for it, but I
Right.
think that there's like, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to talk about like the many different angles of it. Cause like one, you do have the cultural aspect of it. And then you also have like the mental health aspect of it. Then you have like the policing aspect of it. Most of these women go to the police don't do anything. So that you have that. And then you have the family aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's a whole bunch of stuff. And it's like, it's such a, like I said, divisive topic. You even have guys now who just say, well, not all Hmong guys are like that. Or like, oh, it's her fault that she stayed with him,
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah, it's
Hearing
crazy.
that shit is crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Dude, you hear
It's
people
crazy.
That's
like your age.
The crazy thing is, even some Hmong women say that too. Some Hmong women are like, "Well, you shouldn't have married him." It's like, man, there's so much more to that.
Yeah.
And like even like one aspect of it that I want to talk about in the documentary is like, if you go back and like watch Hmong movies, not even old Hmong movies, like even recent Hmong movies, like you see like husbands like beating their wives or like killing their wives in the movies, and like it's just a funny thing, people just laugh. Like you go watch like a Satal movie, right? It's like he just beats up his wife and people just laugh at it. They're like, oh my God, that's so
It's like a
funny.
comical
Yeah, it's
bit,
like, oh, it's so funny. And then you're like, and you think about it, it's like, well, it's because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
When you watch a movie and like beat up their wife and it's like funny and like it's like, oh my God, it's so funny. He beat up his wife and she died, that's hilarious. And it's like, wait, actually, that's actually not funny. Like that's actually not all right. It's like these things that we don't think about, and I'm not saying that's the cause of it, but these things add up.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that would
Yeah, I
be
wish
great.
you good luck because there's a lot of angles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of angles,
Yeah.
and I assume to you got to pick which angle
Oh,
too.
Yeah.
and if
Because
you were
otherwise
worried
it's
about
endless.
haters before,
Yeah.
oh my
for
God.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Like even like I've seen like with social media, like a lot of these things become public and you got videos of it. There was one where there was like videos of like the the lady like pleading with her family, and then like it became a big cultural conversation where everybody was talking about it, and then you have people like defending it, and oh man, I don't know. I hope you do though. I really hope this. I really hope this works.
That's a very good topic. I definitely like to see that. That's if we can save any lives, even from a documentary, even just the awareness part of it is always. I mean, it's like what they say. Most of the time, you don't even need to be. Nobody needs to be experts, but the awareness level is enough to just sparked the conversations, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that video, whenever the day, if you ever make that, is gonna have a crazy comment section.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think the one voice like that we really need, or I really need in that video, is going to be like a perpetrator, right? And there's been like instances where like a husband will kill his wife, and then he's not unable to kill himself, you know. So
Yeah.
there's one guy we're trying to get, and so hopefully we can get him. But he killed his wife. He wasn't able to kill himself, and so I'm hoping that we can get him on and just kind of like not defend him, but like pick his brain of like
Right.
what drove you to the point, like
Right,
why
yeah.
did you do it, like what was it that like tipped you over the edge? Because I feel like we need to hear that voice, you know.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so we need someone like that, and also I also want to get like a child of like
Yeah.
so like, you know, her family or her parents or her father or her mother, you know, was part of a murder suicide, and kind of hearing their voices too, because they are victims as well, you know, even though
Oh,
they
for sure.
weren't
Yeah.
physically hurt, they went through a lot of stuff, so they're considered victims as well. So to get those voices in is like would really be the, you know, the point that we need to make. So
Yeah, and
I hope it happens.
One of the things you had
Absolutely.
mentioned, like, sorry to keep bringing it back, but like, you had talked about like mental health being like such a big aspect. Like, you know, my father's getting older, and like one of the things is like I watch it slowly deteriorate, and I don't have the greatest relationship with them, but like you know, I just can see a world where if him and my mother were still together, like things going bad, you know, and man, I don't know how much I want to say, but like, you know, mental health just doesn't spring upon, like it, you know, it just doesn't come up. Like you see these things, like you can
Right.
notice patterns, and I think you know, maybe something helpful for people too is just like, hey, like when you start noticing these traits, like, or what patterns to be looking out for, where you can, so like you can address it, or at least like try to find like the right help for that person. Yeah, because like mental health is such a big conversation, and you know, amongst our podcast
Yeah,
too, is
yeah.
like, you know, we talk about changes and patterns of behaviors, but I don't know, man. It's
no, I 100% agree. Like this other video we're working on is PTSD among like Hmong vets, and you know, we've interviewed a couple of them, and like when I asked them like, do you have, it's hard because it's like, how do you even explain post-traumatic stress
Right.
syndrome to people who don't speak English? Because
Right.
in Hmong video cuma lalu dong, right? So
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to ask them like about like their symptoms, and they're like, oh, I don't have that. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong with me. And it's
Yeah.
just like, because when you explain to them, they're like, oh, like I'm not crazy, you know. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not saying you're
Yeah,
crazy,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Like PTSD is,
Yeah.
it's you're not crazy, but in the Hmong language, we don't even have a word for
No,
that. So it's like
I-
I'm trying to ask them these things, and it's like, oh no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But then you ask them other questions. You're like, okay, well, like in the middle of the night, do you still like have nightmares?
Right.
Do you, when you hear loud noises, do you react? And they're like, oh yes, I do. I'm like, okay, well those are symptoms of like PTSD,
Yeah.
right? Those are symptoms of like mental health,
Yeah.
right? So like when you say it like that, then they'll answer you. But then if you just explain like
Yeah.
PTSD to them, they're like, no, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm fine. You know.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about that stuff.
And what about, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, but like, what about the argument that it's like, oh, in 20 years when this generation disappears, all these problems are just going to be gone? Like, do you
Oh.
hear that a lot, or?
No, I do hear that, but my thing is always like, okay, well, the thing is, you know, PTSD and like mental health, I believe it always existed. It's just no one talked about it, and then
Right.
now when you're actually talking about it, we've brought it to the forefront, and now a lot of people are talking about it, and people are aware of it. So I don't think it'll ever go away. I don't think it'll ever go away. I think the types of PTSD is going to be different now, because you know, now people are, you know, I didn't have to run through a jungle, you know, I didn't have to
Right.
fight in a war, so I
Right.
don't have that type of PTSD.
Right.
But my type of PTSD might be different. My mental
Yeah.
health might be different now, you know.
Right. Yeah, your traumas look very different.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about PTSD with veterans, we're talking about like 70s and like 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Most of these
like-
guys are really old. They're like
Okay,
60 years old, 70
Yeah.
years old now. Yeah.
I was thinking you were talking about like 2000s.
Oh, those would be good
guys.
too.
Yeah.
Those would be good too. Because
Although they might not speak about it as much.
yeah, yeah.
Or maybe they would. I don't know.
I mean,
Something you want to say, Mr.
No, but I mean, it's just something that, I mean, I never went to war, but I mean, I was a firefighter for 9 years, so
Yeah.
I can understand.
Yeah,
I can understand
You've probably seen
PTSD.
some wild shit though.
Seen it all, dude. Seen it all. Yeah, no, I mean, I can understand PTSD. I can also understand guys in egos, which, and then especially now you mix it into Hmong culture.
yeah.
But guys in general too, I would say.
Yeah.
Guys in general,
Yep.
and egos can be pretty detrimental in not seeking outside help when you see crazy stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that PTSD, even when I was a firefighter and people were claiming PTSD through the city or whatever, even the city doesn't know how to like actually file you under a PTSD folder. Like there's no,
Right.
there's not like a legit like,
Right.
oh, you have had 3 bad dreams and you had cold sweats at night. Yeah, okay, you fit 2 out of the 3 criteria. Like there's nothing
Right.
that
Yeah.
really categorizes you for PTSD. And to me personally, just my opinion, PTSD is really anybody who's seen anything traumatic that just that you think about more than once after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you've thought about it before. It doesn't need to be dramatic to the point where like it changes you physiologically, like raises your blood pressure or nothing like that. But just you thinking about it again and causing any type of distress is a form of PTSD, you know. And I just speak for myself because I personally have felt that from going to, like, for example, having a lot of crazy calls within the city and then being off work, going through that part of the city and being like, oh shit, I can feel my tensions rising. I'm like, but I'm not even working.
Yeah.
And then that was a time when I realized quickly, like, hey, this is a form of PTSD too. My life is still going the same. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
But why am I getting a higher? Why am I getting tense crossing a part of town
Right.
just because I've seen things here?
Yeah.
You know, so that is that's definitely a form of PTSD. Now, is it a PTSD that someone might put a claim with the city to get paid out? I don't know about that, but it's still a form of like it's changing something in you based on the experiences you've had, you know, and so. I don't know. That's.
I think we found your
Sorry,
first.
No,
I think we found your first
it's
subject matter.
Yeah, no,
But-
it's hard because there's no
no
like
fun-
PTO.
yeah,
There's no like definite like symptom. Like, you know, like it's everyone processes it differently. And there's no like finite like this is what PTSD is. And so it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's hard talking to the elders because there's that language barrier and there's no word for like mental health or like PTSD. So like when I go talk to them, it's a struggle trying to ask them like those things.
I feel like if you, I feel like if you ask an old guy, like, hey, have you ever had a bad dream about like your war, like your times in Vietnam, and then you woke up, or in Laos and you woke up and you were all sweaty? Like, I feel like they'd find a reason to just be like, yeah, I have. But that's what happens when you see those things. You know, like they have a reason. They've justified it in their own head already.
Without actually realizing that anything is wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the move where it's like, all right, since this conversation is tough, or not to like give up on it, but like to have these conversations with maybe younger people, just because I think, especially in the Hmong community, we're kind of going through our own kind of mental health, like I guess. What would you call it? But like, there's a lot of attention on mental health, and especially Hmong mental health, and maybe look into that. You know, there's a Hmong clinic now, you know, with Hmong therapists, and you know, I actually just reached out to them. I think they have like their own podcast, like they're doing like a bunch of cool stuff too, like so maybe just talk about like the state like of like the Hmong youth and mental health. I don't know. Sorry, just pitching different ideas to you, but like.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that mental health will always be a topic that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
And there's no answer for it, you know, unfortunately, you know, and so I'm never ever going to be able to like offer a solution, but simply just talking about it and kind of like progressing the conversation is all I'm after.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, and that's huge.
No.
That's exactly what we're trying to do here. It's just like,
Yeah.
just start the conversation.
Unfortunately, we don't have the videography and narrative skills to put it on, but we're doing it in our own way, right?
Yeah.
But I think where you have it, the way that you're able to do it is great because you can tie the visual aspect of it.
Right,
And
yeah.
like you said earlier, I think it was before we were filming, but like you said, we're always on our phones anyway. So it's like if you can tie the visual aspect of it and you can capture us within the first 10 seconds and we watch it all the way through, maybe we'll learn something or we'll at least question ourselves. And that's the beautiful thing about videographers is just the ability to capture whatever the topic might be. But like in this case, we're talking about pretty serious topics,
Yeah.
but they're important for our community to highlight as well, you know? And so, I mean, I think you just doing those, you're going to link with a hell of a lot of people that have the experience too. That's the beautiful part about what you're doing too, is you're going to be able to connect with people who are experts within these fields and actually get like more answers, which not only is just going to fulfill you, but like that's going to help all of us to watch it too.
100%.
I'm sure it's interesting for you too.
I've met so many wonderful people. It's I've only been, like I said, we've only been doing up for like 2 years, and I've met like super great people, and the people that I'll like consider like friends for the rest of my life now, you know. And so it's one of those things where this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's like, you know, those films, I make them, they're cool, but they're never fulfilling. Whereas like now I have like a really big sense of like fulfillment, you know, like I'm personally, I am much more happier with myself now, even though the topics that I'm making is like pretty, some of them can be pretty heavy stuff. Now I feel more content.
But they're impactful.
Yeah.
And
I'm
that's
glad I could do
important.
that for you.
Yeah, no, seriously.
I learned something watching your thing too.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that Peng had told me about that I want to touch on quick too. We're going almost close to 50 minutes here to an hour. But there's one thing I want to touch about because you left a corporate job, right?
Yes.
To go do your own thing. And like, how long ago was that, and how has that been to make that transition?
Ooh.
Because I think a lot of us, I just went through that recently. I feel like he's probably not too far from going through that too. But
Can't wait to quit.
But I like to talk about that because it's important to. I like to highlight it because I think there's other people that want to hear it and that maybe can find some motivation by listening to us talk about that, the good and the bad. So like, when did you leave that corporate job? Why and how has that been?
So it hasn't actually been that long. It's probably been about half a year.
Okay.
Yeah, fairly recent. I will say that it's been extremely difficult because right now across the mountains is like we're not getting paid.
Right.
So most of it is like it's out of for the love of it. It's like a passion project. You know, we are monetized, but right now we don't nearly have enough, you know, viewers to be able to live off of that. So it's been like extremely difficult. But I will say that it's funny to say, I shouldn't even be laughing, but it's even though I'm probably at the like struggling the most in life right now, I also feel the most content, which is really ironic. I wish I could say like, oh, I make X amount of money and like I'm super happy, but I don't. And so it's like, it's weird because it's like I don't make a whole lot of money, but I'm also really happy in my life right now. So it's weird. But the biggest reason I left was kind of like I mentioned earlier, kind of the bureaucracy of corporate America. It's really draining. And also I just felt like the work that I was doing, like I mentioned earlier, was just not impactful. It just didn't go anywhere. Best example I could say is last year I made a video for the company I worked for, and then like the very next year they're like, we got to redo the whole video. And I'm like, why? They're like, well, the packaging changed. It changed from the year's 2023 now, and we need to change the packaging. I'm like, okay, well, I can just like edit the packaging out. They're like, no, since you're you're going to edit the package anyways, let's just do a whole new video. I'm like, well, lady, the video took like 6 months to make, so it's really not that easy. And so, you know, having to deal with that, it was just kind of like, man, I think it's time to move on to something else. Yeah.
I think I really relate with you because I think I'm in the same shoes as you are, kind of, because I was a firefighter for 9 years and I just left my full-time job about a year ago, give or take. And same thing. The salary was pretty safe as a firefighter. It was pretty good. And to leave that, I'm definitely not making anywhere near where I was before. But mentally, like you said, I feel as content as I've been in a long time, just because there's nobody over my shoulder saying this is what you got to do and this is where you got to be. Like, I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, hey, this is where you got to be. Now I still got to be somewhere, but at least that's a somewhere that I've put into that I've had to implement onto myself. So it asks for a little bit more discipline, but yes, I do feel way more free. Now, my next question that goes to both of us, I guess, is how long do we keep going until we're like, shit, we need to actually make some money here, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, I told myself.
that's the next question.
Yeah, I told myself that I want to be like positive by the end of this year, which hopefully, I don't know how things are going. Things are going okay. I'm hoping that by the end of this year, it will be like I'll be in a better place. I would say that like my end goal is, or like the goal at the end of this year is I would like to be able to produce content on like a bi-weekly basis.
Yep.
Right now I'm averaging probably like one a month, which is like really, really slow. I'd want to be able to transition to kind of like a bi-weekly type of deal. And so hopefully if I can accomplish that, this year will be much better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you already asked about this, but like how do the numbers look like? You don't have to get into the specifics, but like something we'd like to ask is like, how do you make money, like doing what you're doing? Just because like I think there are a lot of people kind of in a similar position where they want to leave their careers to go and pursue like filmmaking and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how does one make money in filmmaking?
Yeah. So, well, for filmmaking, it was a little bit different. You basically are dependent on like the sales of like your movie tickets, your DVDs, and like your streaming platforms. So that it was kind of dependent on those three things. And I definitely noticed when I was doing that was that there's a big influx of people probably within like the first 2 or 3 months. But then after that, it drops way much because I've noticed that the thing is like if it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, or you're hot for like 1 minute, your movie just came out and people like want to watch your stuff. And then after that, it just tapers off. I'll be honest with you, I still have like 100 DVDs left that have not been sold from like the last movie I did. So it's one of those things
Oh
where
shit! Where can I buy it?
I still have
plug it.
on
You should've
Facebook.
brought a box with you.
No, I still have like 100 copies left that I need to get rid of somehow. So, but for Across the Mountains right now, we're just monetized on like YouTube, and so like YouTube, we're trying to get monetized on like Facebook, and so we're close to that. We're getting close to that. So hopefully we can get that monetization. I'm hoping that we can probably get some like sponsorships and like grants and stuff like that to carry us out, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always tough. Like, and you know, I feel like that's something like a lot of people don't talk about. Is just like how does one actually make money doing this? You know, and I think it's because it sounds like really cool and really romantic. Like even my thing where it's like, oh yeah, I left my career to start a farm, but realistically, to live, I'm still working. You know, I just don't work a career. I work a job where I punch in and punch out. But like all my creative juices, I can kind of put towards like what I actually want to do. But like, yeah, like I think the finances of chasing your dreams or following your goals or your passion is definitely needs to be talked about a lot more. And so that's why I asked, you know, and, you know, I didn't want to get like too intrusive of like.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question because I think a lot of people look at like YouTube and they're just like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber. And they just think it's like easy to do that. And I definitely, that's how I thought too. I was like, okay, get 1,000 subscribers, get monetized, make money. It's like, okay, well, you're like making 3 cents a view.
Right.
So it's like, it's really nothing, you know, you really have to be averaging like 20, 30,000 views a video to make like substantial amounts of money. And so like, we're definitely not there yet, but ideally I hope to get there. And I've noticed that also like there's really no other company that's like doing what we're doing. And so hopefully have found a niche and like have found like an audience that like responds well to our content.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Appreciate that. We got time for Hmong Anonymous?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
One
So
up
we
quick.
started this cool segment of the podcast where, are you familiar with Hmong Anonymous?
I saw your last one you guys did.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of like a fun, light way to end the topic.
And we assume that they're not real, even though they could be.
Yeah.
But we all know that it is Hmong Anonymous, and they're probably just satire, maybe / kind of real. Like I'm trying to ask a real question about my life, but I'm gonna pretend it's not me.
Right.
But I think you had a few pulled up, right?
Yeah, and just because there's not any names tied to it, I think we can kind of say some crazier or whatever else. But question: how is your reading ability? Because my last video, man, I was, I have to edit that video, and so I'm like watching the video of me reading it like 100 times. I'm like, oh, dude, like, this is horrible.
Is this one
So
a
scrolls.
four-chapter one?
No. I specifically chose like the shorter paragraphs. So if you guys are submitting stuff to Hmong Anonymous and you want us to like cover it, keep it to a paragraph or two.
Yeah,
Because-
those Hmong Anonymous posts get really long. And the funny thing
Yeah,
is,
they do.
most of my reading, like, it's, oh, my husband's cheating on me, or like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
my wife
yeah,
is
yeah.
cheating on me, or whatever. I'm like, come on, man.
But those are the best ones, though. Those are the most fun. Like in the comment sections, those are the most like, crazy.
Yep.
All right, so we'll just go with this one here, and it's probably not on any of the topics that we've talked about, but we're going by what Hmong Anonymous gives us. So I'm a socially awkward person with friends, but none of them are close friends. Nobody invites me to hang out or sends me text. But when they do, the invites eventually stop. The only time I socialize is when my brothers and sisters-in-law's friends come over to my house. Otherwise, I'm alone in my room at night staring at the wall or binge watch movies. When friends stop inviting me, I develop negative thoughts and blame myself, assuming people hate me or find me annoying. I even imagine self-harm. Well, kind of does go back to things that we've talked about. I even imagine self-harm, thinking to myself that if I were gone, nobody would notice. I never had a chance to hang out with friends when I was younger because my parents wouldn't let me go out unless my cousins or brother were present. Eventually, my cousin got tired of picking me up, so they stopped telling me about outings. When I see pictures on Facebook of people who I thought were friends, happy and enjoying themselves, I started feeling left out. I eventually accept my fate and stopped asking anyone to hang out with. And I don't know, I just stopped there.
Oh yeah. I don't know if
I'm in my 30s now. I've developed trust issues. I refuse to go out. I struggle to keep conversations going and often repeat the same words, like literally.
Sounds like me.
I never learned how to properly socialize with people. Sometimes I wish I had a friend who could understand me and get to know me. I want to go to EDM concerts, Hmong parties, bars. I have so much more, but it would take a book to explain everything. I've tried going to professionals, counseling, and taking meds, but the thing is, American and modern medicine do not work with Asian mental issues. It's not the same with do what makes you happy when I need to be a good daughter and uphold my duties.
That last part is killer.
Lengthy one.
Right? Yeah. That's good enough. That's good enough. We get the gist of it. But like that last part is like the killer part, because like balancing that between like wanting to go out and then like your duties to your family.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I could understand if you didn't really go out when you were younger, that you would feel that.
Yeah.
Like I always feel like some people feel like they missed out, Like I think that's a real feeling, right? Some
Oh,
people
for
feel like they
sure.
missed out, like they...
You know what they call that now?
FOMO?
FOMO.
Yeah,
That's what they call it now.
yeah. That's why I made sure I laid it all out before I actually got settled in. But I can't understand. Like I think that's a real feeling to feel real FOMO.
As an adult? Like,
As an adult, because maybe
especially-
you started a family, you have kids and all that, and maybe you didn't have the chance to do all those things, or maybe you just got married really early. Like we do see that in our society, in our Hmong culture as well, where people do get married
It sounds
quite
like
early.
this person is single though.
That's what I got from it.
Yeah.
That's because she wants to go to like parties and stuff.
I was gonna say before I found out it was a chick, I was gonna say, hey, just call us. But then if I say it now, it'll sound a little weird. But
I initially thought it was a guy, too.
Yeah,
I
Call
was
us
like,
to go out?
huh?
Call us to go out or
like
just
hang
come
out
talk?
to be
They'll say,
friends.
you don't even go out, dude.
Yeah. Or like, hey, if you want a friend, call us. But
Yeah, no,
it's
I'm-
a little different because you're a chick. Sorry. Like I realized like even making new friends as an adult is tough.
yes. Yep.
I think it's just about finding something you like and then going and doing that, and then you're going to find other people that have
relation
that share the
through
same
hobbies.
interests.
Relation
like that.
through
I think
hobbies,
that's a
starts
great
best.
place to start. Like
Yeah.
whatever you're interested in.
But what if I don't have any interest, Pang?
Tinder.
That's what makes it really hard. So my fiance is kind of like, I wouldn't say she's very antisocial.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
when we go out, I always tell her, I'm like, I want you to like make one new friend today. She's like,
Yeah.
I have all the friends I need. I don't
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
new friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you got to make new friends. Like for me, I love meeting new people.
Yeah.
I'm a very sociable person, so I like making new friends. Whereas she's like super antisocial.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you got to make new friends. She's like, I have 5 friends, and those are the only friends I
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
in my life. I'm like, all right, I guess it is what
Yeah.
it is. You
But
know?
that's almost better, right? Because I mean, that's the difference between an introvert. But it sounds like she doesn't know how to go about making friends. Like, and
Yeah.
doesn't even have those 5 friends
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you speak about.
And she doesn't. The thing is, like, she doesn't have the desire to meet new people. Like,
Yeah.
people will come and talk to her. She's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. Like, I'm good.
I wish I had that more. I wish I had that. Like, you know, my wife is that same way where she's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like I don't want new friends, but like I enjoy meeting new
Right,
people
same,
and stuff like that.
same.
So then, but I wish I could just be content and just be like, fuck everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Don't worry, you will get there when you're old.
Yeah. Damn, am I not
We'll all
old
get
yet?
there.
Yeah.
We'll all get there.
I'm already 30 freaking 2. But advice for this lady here.
Advice? Fuck, I don't know.
Go
tough.
to
Get out there.
Go to Unison.
Don't go to Unison. The people there are assholes.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, you heard it here first.
I do like Unison. I will say though that if you're looking for new friends, like actual friends,
Yeah.
Unison's not the place to find
Yeah.
them. Like you'll meet people there, but those
Yeah.
people are not here to be your friend. You
Yeah.
know, like,
I always felt that way about like bars and
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and stuff like
yeah.
Yeah, you're there with your friends. You're not
Right. You're not there
going
to make
meet
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard, especially nowadays when people are just really judgmental now, you
Yeah.
know, and if you go to a place and you're already socially awkward, people are going to judge you. So I would say that's not the right place to make friends. So
You know what I would say is find a virtual friend and then eventually
Yeah.
transition that into like a life.
I mean, shit, people are friends gaming, dude.
Yeah.
You always see those videos where people like meet each other after 10 years of gaming together.
Yeah.
It's like,
Then they get
they're still
married
real
and shit
friends.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I think like that was a thing when we were young where you would make fun of somebody who just have like date somebody through online or something. But like now I think that's a very real thing because you're actually spending a lot of time with each other. You're getting to know each other probably in the best way without being like without being objective and without judging like the way they look or the way they carry themselves. So like find a virtual friend. You know, if you like gaming, there's probably somebody that you game with on a regular
Yep,
basis,
yep.
or and then eventually transition that into meeting them in real life. You know, guy or girl, it doesn't really matter.
yeah, Tu said the perfect thing. Friendship through hobbies. You know, you
Yeah.
find someone who
Yeah.
has similar hobbies to you, and then those people.
But
just
then I
become your
always find it
friends.
hard because some people feel like they have no hobbies.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. Then I'm stuck. I
Yeah.
have hobbies. I tend
Yeah.
to have
Right.
hobbies, but some people really don't. Like some people's
That's
hobbies is
true.
watching K-drama movies. Like that's kind of hard to be like, yo, who else out there is watching K-dramas that want to watch together? You know what I'm saying?
There's
Like,
probably like blogs and chats
Oh,
where
I
those
believe
things
it.
exist.
100%.
yeah, but you gotta seek. Yeah, you gotta seek
Yeah.
that too, though, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
don't
gotta-
know if you're a real person out there who wrote that, and that's actually about you.
You know what? Call
Gotta-
us.
gotta-
Call
gotta-
us.
you
Yeah,
gotta-
call us. It's absolutely
Got to
okay.
get out of
yeah.
your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that makes dating so hard now. Is
Yeah.
like exactly like that, where like it's hard to meet people. You know, even if you are not a socially awkward person, it's
Yeah.
just hard to meet people in general now. It's
Right.
hard to make people are just it's just
Yeah.
hard to meet people now.
And people exist in their own bubbles, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not alone. I know plenty
Yeah.
of people
Yep.
similar to this. So yeah, don't feel like you're alone out there. Start playing video games online. Meet somebody online. You know, find something you like to do,
Yeah.
and then
100%.
meet other people that do that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're rolling on an hour and 20 minutes
Yeah.
here. So, last thing before we end, first of all, we always like to acknowledge and thank our guest just for coming through and
Thank you,
spending that
guys.
hour with us to talk to strangers, even if you know us a little bit. but to just come share your story. Ultimately, we love people that come here and talk about their not only success but failures. I think is most important, because failures is where other people listening can probably learn something out of. Success is great, but I feel like we get too much of that already. It's more about the failures, and then people who are willing to come here and actually discuss this out over an hour. It means a lot to us. The last thing is, where do people find you if they want to follow you, whether you want to share personal or business or any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier, you guys can find us on Facebook under Across the Mountains. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We also have a website. And I'll say this is we're always looking for stories. So we have a submit your pitch story webpage. And if you have an interesting story, just let us know. We're always looking for stories. I think all stories matter. So if you have I sent you to that page too.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yep,
submit your stories to us, where we're always looking for stories to cover. So yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was great.
Yeah.
It's been an hour now, but it flew by. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for coming by.
Yeah,
you,
everybody, that's it. If you're out there, you want to share a story, Across the Mountains, is it acrossthemountains.com, the website?
Yep.
Okay, acrossthemountains.com. If you got something, send it in. They'll look at it and then maybe go from there. But thank you very much. And
check out his YouTube and Facebook too. There's
Don't
already
like
a
it.
bunch of great content on there.
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Oh, are you still selling sweaters?
We are. Yep. So we
Yeah.
got merch too. Buy your merch.
Oh shit, dude.
Nice.
I'll talk to you after the pod. But yeah, I need one. I meant to reach out to you like a little while back ago when you first made that video.
Cool.
So
Let me know.
I'll do
Let me
that.
know.
All right. You want to hit that?